Hey folks, Dave, the not so evil EvilViking13 here with a very overdue video. One of the most frequent questions that I get is, what is your PC's hardware? I wanted to make a video describing this because this year, 2014, was the first year that I have done a new build in 4 years. Let's start things off by looking at my old monstrosity of a computer. This is my 2010 build, one of the, I believe, 2nd gen i7s. It was an i7-930, based off of an EVGA motherboard. This is a big part of why I was so excited to at last do a rebuild. I got into the i7s at a weird time, back when triple channel memory was still trying to be a thing, and USB 3.0 had not even been standardized yet, back in summer 2010. Although this computer had served me well, I really regretted missing out on USB 3 especially, and having bought into the triple channel memory that everybody was saying was the way of the future. That lasted for like 7 months. I would have been much better off all those years enjoying a larger amount of RAM in just dual channel versus my slightly faster triple channel RAM. In order to maximize the value that I was getting for this new build, I wanted to reuse as many components from my older build as possible. Not all of my parts were 4 years old. In particular, I was running my two GTX 680s and SLI for almost a year before I upgraded to this new system. While a bit older, those 680s are no slouch, and to save money I decided to maintain those into my newer build. I also reused some common things like my DVD drive, nothing too surprising there, and actually my tough power 850 watt power supply. I have to give Thermaltake a shout out here. This 850 watt power supply has survived and powered 3 separate builds since I first bought it in 2008 for my first Intel quad-core build. That was back in the Core 2 Quad generation. This power supply actually survived a motherboard fire on my first initial planned out i7 build in 2010. That initial build had a shipping issue that had damaged the motherboard, and a capacitor would later catch on fire because it was bent and had poor airflow around it. The power supply survived the fire, powered all 4 years of my older i7 build, and is now powering this new build. If you guys want a quality name brand survivalist power supply, the Thermaltake Tough Power is definitely named Tough Power for a reason. 3 builds, 1 fire, still kicking. Thumbs up from me. Alright, now on to the good stuff, the new hardware. Now, I know a lot of you guys aren't super up to date on the latest and greatest PC hardware, and maybe all this is going to be Greek to you, so to help you out, I have a Google document all set up with all of my components for this build with links so you can check it all out for yourself. The link to that Google Doc will be in the description right below. To start things off, I said goodbye to my old Cooler Master Cosmos 1000 full tower case. I loved the look of this originally, but it was very outdated and was missing a lot of new cable routing features, and of course support for things like USB 3. Also, it weighed a ton, so I decided that it was time to go to a mid-tower case. I picked the Corsair C70 case, a very popular modern case, and I chose the OD military green color because my home office is actually also my workspace, and it's also where my firearms workbench is. Below the workbench, I have a large amount of actual ammo cans full of ammo, so I thought it would be kind of cool to actually have a case that matched all of the gun stuff around my desk. For the motherboard, I went with one of the few kind of budget options for LGA 2011. I picked the Asus P9X79LE. For the CPU, here's where I got a little bit crazy, and this is also why I bought an LGA 2011 motherboard. I picked up a used Intel 3930K hexacore. That is 6 cores and 12 threads total with hyperthreading. I do a lot of 3D work on top of my video rendering, so I really wanted to have a forward-looking CPU, seeing I only do an upgrade every, 3 or 4 years, if that. For my memory, I went back to one of my more trusted brands, Mushkin. I picked up 16 gigs of Mushkin Blackline. I did have one of these DIMMs fail on me within the first few months of owning this build, but Mushkin support was excellent. They were able to get me replacement DIMMs very quickly, and I was able to cross-ship and keep the one stick that was working while they shipped me a new set. So, unfortunate failure, but everyone has them. Awesome support from Mushkin though. For my graphics cards, I repurposed my two GTX 680s that I picked up used over the last year or so. These cards are still very powerful, especially two of them in SLI, and with graphics cards being a huge chunk of your usual PC building budget, I wanted to put that money to use elsewhere and get some more life out of these cards. I also repurposed my boot SSD. I have an Intel 330 series, a Maple Crest SSD. It's only 180 gigabytes, but that's plenty for my operating system and DayZ and a couple of other games that I play frequently, and of course, frequently used programs like Sony Vegas and Photoshop. Well, that finishes off our hardware list. Now let's talk about the actual build process. Like I mentioned guys, I had already built Joel a new computer using the C70 case, and knew that it was going to be a lot of fun to work with, and my computer was no exception. The build was quick and had no real complications, and the cable routing options are beautiful. Not to mention, this case looks nice in a very army military kind of way without being like obnoxiously so. It's still subtle and clean looking, which is definitely what I wanted. For me, the only real downside for this case was the fact that the top intake of the case, where I mounted the Corsair H105 radiators for my water cooler, those grates were not filtered. With two 120mm fans on that water cooling radiator pulling air into my case, I knew that dust was going to be an issue. So I bought some extra PC filter foam, cut it to shape, and attached it to the interior top of my case using simple two-sided sticky pads. I kept the filter in between the top of the case and the actual radiator for the H105. The radiator's pressure, with all of its mounting screws, helps to hold it into place, and that's worked really well for me. I only lost about 1 degree Celsius of total cooling with that slightly restricted airflow, but the inside of my case has stayed almost completely dust-free over the months. I spent a weird amount of time on my final two case mods. The first was getting the cover plate for my new card reader to match the outside of my case. The solid black color of both my reused DVD drive as well as my new card reader stood out quite a bit in comparison to my olive drab case. I used a combination of military olive green spray paint and a black spray paint to help darken it to paint these two faceplates. The colors are far from exact, but I got pretty close. Unless you look right at it, very close, the colors blend quite well actually. Also, check out the power and reset buttons on the Corsair C70 case. It's like buttons from an F-18 Hornet's cockpit. Very cool. For my final customization for this case, I really disliked the fan cuts in the side window of the C70 case. I did not want to mount a side fan, which would be aiming more or less at my microphone and would add a ton of fan noise, and I really didn't think I needed those extra fans. So that just left a bunch of holes in my side panel to intake air and let dust into the case. This mod was a lot more simple than all that painting. I simply ordered a replacement window. I ordered the custom window from mnpctech.com, and it came within a few days. It wasn't the cheapest thing in the world, especially with shipping for a giant plexiglass sheet, but the quality was incredible. They cut it very carefully and included all the parts you needed to get a nice clean installation, including replacement rubber grommets for all the screws. All I had to do was unscrew the old window full of holes and install the new ones. I also decided to go with a completely clear side panel window instead of the slightly tinted one that came with the case. Looking at the window though, I decided that it was a little bit dark inside. I wanted to see all these beautiful new parts. I ordered a very simple orange LED set from Amazon.com and installed it in a ring around the window where it was out of sight. This just barely lights the interior of the PC and gives a nice subtle look to the inside. The orange color goes very well with the olive drab green of the case as a whole, and I think I made the right choice there. With the build all put together, it was time for some final touches and the overclocking. I love the slight orange tint that I added to my case with those internal LEDs, and I like having a backlight behind whatever screens I'm looking at, be it my TV or my computer monitors. So I replaced my old AmbiX LED lighting set with a very simple remote-controlled LED light strip from Amazon.com. Usually I have the colors matched to the same kind of orange inside my case, and it makes for a nice consistent look across my desk. It also helps to ease eye strain as I'm working on my screens for hours at a time, or playing games for hours at a time. For overclocking, I focused on getting the CPU overclocked as my main focus. I took it from its stock 3.2 GHz to a total of 4.2 GHz. This has remained very stable, and thanks to the power of my cooler, even in the summer, it idles at about 41 degrees Celsius. Even with all 12 threads and 6 cores cranking, the CPU only hits maybe 65 degrees Celsius. Alright guys, well that is the inside of the case. Let's take a quick tour around the outside of the case. Let's look at my overall workstation. I have two 1920 by 1080p LCD screens. One is a very old Samsung TFT based screen with a terrible viewing angle. The other is an excellent Dell IPS screen with a, I think, 10 millisecond response time, but most importantly, accurate color. I've been using this screen for quite a few years. It is what hooked me on IPS screens, and my next screen will definitely be an IPS. Behind my screens I have a couple of showcase items and some posters. I have, of course, the original Arma 2 map of Trinaris, which is still pretty useful for navigating in DayZ. I also have a signed Battlefield 3 poster from some of the EA and DICE and Origin team, actually. I got that poster after my original Hunting for DICE Dev dog tags video way back in 2011. Hanging from that poster, I have my Battlefield Engineer dog tags that they also sent along with the poster itself. Also hanging from the poster is my original Team USA Battlefield 4 Showdown Live Access Pass that I got while playing the Battlefield 4 Showdown in London, England. I used to use a Razer Mamba mouse, but it unfortunately died after only about 2.5 years, so I'm now using a Battlefield 3 Razer mouse that I got as a prize quite a few years back for submitting some Battlefield ideas to a contest. It's a little bit lightweight, but the artwork is cool and the texture is quite nice. My keyboard is relatively new as well. At the end of last year, I purchased a Cooler Master CM Storm Ultimate Quickfire keyboard. This is a full-size mechanical gaming keyboard with Cherry MX blue switches and a full, nice, white, and subtle LED backlight. I do really enjoy backlit keyboards, but I really hate gaudy colors. My microphone is an Audio-Technica ATR 2500 condenser USB microphone. This is one of the better budget microphones out there, and I have it attached to a simple on-stage stand. The stand really helps to get the microphone closer to my mouth for better sound quality, although being a cheaper stand, I do have to counterweight it to keep it from sinking onto my desk. Moving out from my desk proper, I have a set of 5.1 surround sound speakers whose name I can't even remember. I bought these things in like 2007 and they've held up pretty well. They're low power speakers and definitely still in the budget range. I think I paid $70 for them new in 2007, but they work pretty well and they have held up well to the abuse over the years. I do usually play with headphones because I'm playing online with other people, but it is always fun to occasionally pop in a single player game like Tomb Raider and play it with surround sound. The sharp-eyed among you might have noticed a couple of interesting things hanging out around my screens. We have, of course, Vault Boy, who I got with my Fallout 3 collector's tin, no regrets there, great game and great collector's box, and he is still a definite part of my desk. And tucked underneath my left IPS screen is my carry firearm. This is a CZ75B, a very classic Czech designed and built pistol, one of the original Wonder 9s. When I'm not carrying it, I usually just unholster right here in the office, and it does have a couple of interesting modifications. It has tritium night sights, which actually glow in the dark. It has some custom wooden grips and some custom rubberized magazine pads because I was tearing holes in my shirts while carrying. Behind my screens is the LED set that you guys heard me mention earlier. I really do love the color options and the brightness of these light sets. They actually make a difference when working at your screens for a long amount of time. I own a number of headphones, but my current go-to headphones are my Astros A50s. I actually won these headphones as part of my prize package from Astros last year from winning the Battlefield 4 Showdown Live in London, England. The entire USA team got Astros. They're not the most amazing headphones in the world, but they do sound pretty great, and once I tried out that convenience of having wireless headphones, I was hooked. I still use wired headphones at work, and I am constantly rolling over the headphone cord. There's the wireless receiving base hanging out right there on top of the case. I also mentioned earlier that my office is also my home armory and workbench area. If you guys have ever watched me live stream, you might have noticed a rifle hanging out behind me on a hook on the wall. This was originally a DPMS Panther Carbine AR-15. It is semi-automatic and chambered in 5.56 NATO. It has since been heavily modified with the addition of mag pull, OT stock, the handguard, the pistol grip, everything all around. It also has a red dot sight, a laser, and a flashlight, as it is decked out for not only sports shooting, but home defense. Speaking of live streaming, the camera that I use for live streams is the Logitech HD Webcam C310. It's a great little budget full HD webcam and a huge upgrade from my $9 Microsoft webcam thing that I was using before that was just absolutely awful. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tour of my new build and my Battlestation as a whole. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will catch you guys on the next video.